I'm using a standard concrete mix ratio of 6:1. The goal now is to keep adding concrete all the way through the center of the form, constantly working with the rake to get all the air out of the mixture. With all the work complete on my concrete foundation, I let it set up and harden overnight.
You come and go like a monsoon rain. You hide and show like a lightning bolt. You have it all.
In this episode, we're going to be creating the concrete foundation for our paved patio area. The slab sits about 100 mil above ground height, due to the fact that this new structure has to meet the height of the pre-existing wooden stairs that tie into the deck. The other critical factor of our concrete foundation is how it resolves into the corner posts of the existing pergola. Our formwork was built set back from the edge of our structure, leaving enough room for slices of paver to be clad on later, to help create a unified paved look for the entire patio. In the last episode, we excavated the area, built our timber formwork, and started the process of filling the base with gravel. After allowing the gravel to dry out over the weekend, I need to do some fine tuning to the gravel base before we pour our concrete. My plan is to pour a 75 mil thick concrete slab for our foundation, so I need to add about 30 mil more of gravel. I'm using these scrap timbers that are 30 mil thick as a guide by putting it around the edge of my formwork and then filling additional gravel up to that height. I also want to compact it in best I can just by walking it in with my feet. I'm double checking the measurements of our foundation so I can cut our rebar mesh to the right size.
There's things in life you simply need to know, but sun and rain and trust in letting go. It takes a bit of suffering, sleepless nights and wandering, before you make it safely to the end, the end, the
end. The steel reinforcement mesh needs to be suspended above the gravel. I'm using small blocks of wood, which I'll be removing as we pour the concrete. I'm building a temporary ramp out of scrap timber so my wheelbarrow full of concrete can get up over my formwork without bumping it out of alignment. A wheelbarrow full of wet concrete is extremely heavy, so it's worth taking the time to put a few extra screws in this structure so it won't fail on us once we get going with our concrete. When I've added enough screws to keep the ramp sturdy, I give it a test run with my empty wheelbarrow just to make sure everything's working properly. To help keep the edge of our concrete straight, I'm adding a number of stakes around the entire perimeter of our formwork.
And if you ever wonder, there is nothing wrong with a little thunder. There's things in life you simply need to know, but sun and rain and trust in letting go. It takes a bit of suffering, sleepless nights and wandering, before you make it safely to the end.
I lightly wet the whole area down in preparation for us adding the concrete. I'm mixing the concrete a considerable distance away from where we're pouring our slab, due to where the materials were dumped by the delivery truck. I start the process by adding water to my mixer. I'm using a standard concrete mix ratio of 6:1. My system for allowing the ingredients to mix properly is to add 3 shovel loads of gravel and sand mix, and then move on to adding the Portland cement. I'm adding 1 full shovel load of the Portland cement, but I break it into thirds to help the ingredients bind properly in the mixer. If I was to dump a full shovel load of the Portland cement into the mixer, we could end up with a dry pocket of cement, which would compromise the strength of our concrete. I then add 3 more shovels of the gravel sand mix and then take a look at the mixture to see how it's blending. In this case, I want to add a little more water. When I'm satisfied with the consistency, I dump it into my wheelbarrow. I use my foot to stabilize the mixer. It can be a little top heavy when it's full of wet concrete. I always have to be careful on the first part of pouring the concrete into the form. I don't want to push our steel reinforcement out of alignment, so I add the first batch quite gently. Once we get a couple of loads of concrete into the form, the steel mesh will stabilize. Once I've gently worked the concrete through the steel mesh, it's stable enough now for me to remove one of the wood supports. The goal now is to keep adding concrete all the way through the center of the form, constantly working with the rake to get all the air out of the mixture. I'm continuing to remove the small wooden blocks as we fill more concrete into the system. As our concrete base gets larger, I add pieces of plywood so I can get the wheelbarrow deeper into the formwork.
9 to 5 was my dad's advice. Don't think twice, I want the luxury life. My beauty can lose it, I'll use it. I'll take what I want. Oh yeah. A whole lot of ticket, not enough time. A whole lot of work, trophy wide, like me.
Once we've pushed the concrete all the way to the other side of the form, I fill in the sides and corners and removing our small wood blocks as we go, constantly working with my rake to keep agitating the air out of the concrete. I pay extra attention to agitating it in the corners and along the sides of the forms. We want these to be really strong. We don't want any weakness on the edges or the corners. Once I've spread a base of concrete throughout the entire system, I then need to fill it to the top of our forms before we start our screeding process to create the smooth foundation slab. At this stage, we've mixed about 75% of the concrete we're going to need.
The clock keeps ticking, still running out of time.
Of concrete getting close to filling our form, I set up for the finishing process with a 2x4 I'm going to use to screed the top of the slab. After getting the concrete to the top of the form timbers with my trowel, I'm working my way back from the step. I'm using a piece of plywood to stand on so I don't sink into the concrete. I continue to add concrete to bring the volume up to the top of our form as I work the 2x4 to screed the top of the slab to get a really smooth finish.
Slow traffic caused me stress. Show no panic, I'm just born in a dress. And I know that I'm older, I'm done. I'll do what I want. I'll do what I want. Spending a Sunday at the gym, trying to fit in. Counting the days until I meet my future husband. I try to be kind to myself.
With all the work complete on my concrete foundation, I let it set up and harden overnight. The next morning the slab's looking good, but I notice there's some animal tracks left in it. Little Gus is here to greet me and I think I might know who caused the tracks in the concrete. Because we're going to be sticking pavers over the top of this concrete, it's not going to matter. The concrete looks hard enough for me to start pulling my formwork apart. It's always a really enjoyable moment when I pull off the formwork and get to see my concrete for the first time. I need to do a little work to ensure our concrete slab is dead flat for when we stick our pavers on. I'm using my diamond bit on my grinder to take some of the bumps off from the formwork. The level works as a reference to tell me when I've flattened it out enough. Once the edge is ground flat enough, I move on to grinding some of the bumps off the doggy paws left in our concrete.
Don't think twice, I want the luxury. My beauty can lose it, I'll use it. I'll take what I want. Oh yeah. A whole lot of taking, not enough time. A whole lot of work, trophy wide.
I wash off all the concrete dust with my hose and give it one last check with my level to make sure I didn't leave any little bumps behind. When we get to cementing our pavers on top, I want to get it as flat as possible.
Said I know now I'm older, I'm done. I'll do what I want. I'll do what I want. Spending time trying to take, cutting the days until I meet the future husband. I try to be kind to myself.
Looks like we're going to be rained off for the day. The weather where I live is highly unpredictable and I often get rained off. Join me in the next episode as we stick some of the pavers onto our concrete.
Slow traffic cause me stress. Show no panic, I'm just born in a dress. And I know now I'm older, I'm done. I'll do what I want. I'll do what I want. Spending a Sunday at the gym trying to fit in. Counting the days until I meet my future husband. I try to be kind to myself. I say, girl, you got this. A whole lot of ticking, not enough time, not enough time. A whole lot of sweat, trophy wide, trophy wide. The clock keeps ticking, still running out of time. It's a whole lot of ticking, not enough time, not enough time.
Thanks for joining me this week in my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.